Imagine you're running a race. You're at the starting line. You have a rock in your hand. You have to carry it through the race. It's a pretty sizable rock, so you imagine it's going to slow you down. You look to your right, and the person standing next to you doesn't have anything to carry. You look to your left, and that person has 2 rocks to carry. Further down the line, you see someone with 3, 4, 5 rocks. You think to yourself, well, I'm going to be slowed down with my 1 rock. I'm not going to do as well as the person who has nothing to carry, but I'll probably do better than the people who have 2 or 3 or more rocks to carry. Why do I mention this? Drug addiction and alcoholism are defined as substance use disorder. It's a condition, they are conditions, that affect both brain behavior and function. Scientists and researchers, both psychological and biological, have defined various risk factors for substance use disorder, like genetics, age, gender, the age at which a subject has started using drugs or alcohol. But one that's talked about less is whether or not you're a member of the LGBTQ community. Drug addiction and alcoholism affect a large portion of the population. 2.3 million people in 1987 in the United States were diagnosed with substance use disorder, and that number has only grown since. Factors used to assess substance use disorder shift when you look at a population of LGBTQ people. Research shows that not only are LGBTQ members at higher risk for substance use and abuse, but that treatment and relapse prevention are also different for those individuals. There aren't nearly as many studies on members of the LGBTQ community, often due to stigma in the community and outside of the community. But thankfully, some research is now being done and action can be taken to better the lives of members of the LGBTQ community who have more than 1 rock to carry through the race. A meta-analysis study by Kerr and his colleagues sampled a group of lesbian, bisexual, and heterosexual college students. The study demonstrated that bisexual women had greater odds of using tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana than heterosexual women and lesbians. Bisexual women also showed greater odds of using illicit drugs and misusing prescription drugs, as well as higher odds of using amphetamines other than meth, sedatives, and ecstasy when compared to lesbians. Overall, the data showed that there were higher rates of drug abuse between lesbian and bisexual women than there were for heterosexual women. In addition, it shows that the rates are highest for bisexual women. This study doesn't detail so much the quality of drug abuse, nor the possibilities for treatment, and how such treatment might differ for the LGBTQ community versus those who identify as heterosexual and cisgendered. Further studies provided more data on the quality of substance abuse across sexual identities. Newcomb and colleagues found that drinking increased significantly over time in a linear fashion, and it intended to increase more rapidly across LGBTQ male populations than LGBTQ female populations. My first visual demonstrates the prevalence of drug abuse between gay men and heterosexual men. As you can see here, the gray shows the heterosexual men, and all of the colors show incredibly higher rates of LGBTQ and gay men using illicit drugs or legal drugs like tobacco. Why does this matter? It's important to consider why individuals in the LGBTQ community are at higher risk. That way we can help prevent substance use disorder from occurring as much as it does, and also we can help treat them. One of the major risk factors for substance use disorder in general across the entire population is certain mental health conditions. These include anxiety, personality disorders, and depression. A startling and significant study found that those in the LGBTQ community, represented by this blue bar, have much higher rates of anxiety, depression, and co-occurring Axis I disorders than did the red population, heterosexual people. So this is definitely a great potential risk factor for why members of the LGBTQ community are more at risk for substance use disorder. But what else is there? LGBTQ members have the added weight of having a different sexual orientation than mainstream society in their lives. This weight creates a host of difficulties that compound the reasons why LGBTQ individuals become addicted to alcohol and drugs. There is significant heterogeneity in the etiological pathways that lead to alcohol use in youth, and that correlates of drinking are similar to those found in general populations. Oftentimes, the factors leading to substance use and abuse in the LGBTQ community are social and cultural. So in addition to discrimination, drinking and drug use is ingrained in many LGBTQ social lives and worlds. Often this is out of a need to make connections, a need to find intersections in your community. Oftentimes that might even be motivated by discrimination you feel, that you need to make connections in a community that might accept you even as you are, even as a member of the LGBTQ community. Overall, the studies mentioned show that there is higher risk for LGBTQ community members for substance use and abuse, and that they are in need of specific and tailored prevention programs. Now, what are the treatment options for members of the LGBTQ community? Treatment for the LGBTQ community is complicated for several reasons. Members of the community, because they have special risk factors and special factors which influence their abuse and use, need specialized treatment. Unfortunately, this specialization is not as widespread as it could be. One additional factor for LGBTQ community members that influences drug addiction is the presence of an HIV diagnosis. Studies show that there is a statistically significant relation between HIV status and readmission to drug abuse treatment clinics. Treatment is further complicated for members of the LGBTQ community in various ways. First, members often do not present with their sexual identity when also presenting for treatment. This becomes problematic because if there is a specialized treatment for said LGBTQ community member, it cannot be given if an individual's sexual identity is not known. Treatment specialization includes needing to target factors which contribute specially to LGBTQ substance use and abuse. These factors differ completely from those of heterosexual and cisgender identifying individuals, and thus must be treated differently if the substance abuse is to be treated overall. Another important element to substance abuse recovery is having positive role models, whether by way of therapists, clinicians, sponsors, or members of one's personal life. Unfortunately for LGBTQ members who are a minority, such positive role models are fewer and farther between than they are for heterosexual or cisgendered patients presenting for substance abuse treatment. Some of these role models are available for LGBTQ members at GLB-specific Alcoholics Anonymous, Marijuana Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous, but these are still fewer and further in quantity and frequency than general AA, MA, and NA meetings. The issues surrounding LGBTQ drug addiction ultimately come down to the discrimination and othering that also surrounds the community. The need to cope with discrimination-related stress, being othered and being different, a need to drink to become otherwise inebriated in order to connect with like-minded others begins the cycle of drug addiction in the LGBTQ community. And when a member of the LGBTQ community tries to end the cycle, tries to get sober and go through recovery, they have fewer resources available to them. So what can be done? How can substance abuse disordered members of the LGBTQ community be helped? The first thing is awareness. The first thing is to list it as a risk factor for substance abuse disorder and to start talking about it and stop neglecting it. What else can be done? Further opening of our minds and arms and hearts to members of the LGBTQ community to try and take some rocks out of their race. Thank you.